Hi, my name's Venus. On the day I got married, not a single person from my family showed up. Not my mom, not my dad. They were all at my sister's birthday, laughing, drinking, posting pictures like nothing happened. I told myself it was a mistake until I found the proof that it wasn't. What they did behind my back didn't just ruin a wedding, it rewrote my whole life. And that's where everything started to break. I woke up before the sun that morning, the kind of quiet hour where the world hasn't yet decided what kind of day it's going to be. I sat up in bed and stared at the dress hanging by the window. It looked softer in the pale light, almost shy. For a second, I imagined my mother helping me zip it up, my father knocking on the door pretending not to cry. I smiled at that thought. That's how I wanted to remember them, before everything turned hollow. Outside, the air smelled like rain that never came. It was a perfect fall morning, crisp and gentle, the kind that makes you believe good things still happen. I made coffee, held the cup with both hands, and tried to calm the small storm in my chest. They'll be there, I told myself. They wouldn't miss this. I had chosen this small church because it felt personal, close, warm, no pressure, no extravagance. I wanted everyone comfortable, especially them. When I arrived, the sky was a soft blue brushed with gold, and the pastor was already waiting by the door. Guests began arriving one by one, my husband's family, a few friends from work, our neighbors. I smiled, hugged, and thanked people, but every few minutes my eyes went back to the street. No sign of them. I told myself traffic, maybe they took a wrong turn. The ceremony was supposed to start at 3. At 3:15, I told the organist to play another song while I waited. My husband leaned close and whispered, "We can't wait forever." When I walked down the aisle, I tried to focus on his face. He looked at me like nothing else in the room existed. I wanted that feeling to last. But then I saw the front row, 6 empty chairs, all tied neatly with white ribbons. My mother's seat had her favorite yellow flower on it, still untouched. People shifted awkwardly, their smiles thinning. The sound of whispers moved through the room like a breeze. My heart pounded in my ears. I kept glancing back, half expecting the doors to open. They didn't. By the time we said our vows, I felt like I was standing on glass, trying to smile, careful not to crack. He said his words with steady warmth, his thumb tracing circles on my hand. I repeated mine, voice trembling but clear. When the pastor announced us as husband and wife, people clapped, cameras flashed, and I tried to look grateful. But all I saw were those empty chairs. At the reception, the lights were dimmer, the music louder, and I pretended harder. My maid of honor brought me a drink, her smile forced. "You probably shouldn't see this," she whispered, but handed me her phone anyway. On the screen was a video, my sister's birthday party. Balloons, music, people cheering her name. My parents were there, laughing, holding glasses of wine. My stomach dropped. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something quieter, like realization had a taste, and it was metallic. I stared at that screen until my eyes blurred. My mother's dress was the same one she wore to my college graduation. She'd told me it was too old to wear again. I set the phone down carefully, as if it could shatter. Around me, people kept laughing, clinking glasses. The world didn't pause just because mine did. I excused myself, went to the hallway, then slipped into the restroom. I locked the door and leaned against the sink, the music muffled behind the walls. I tried to breathe, counting slowly like I used to when I was a child hiding in my room after an argument. My reflection in the mirror looked calm, but my hands trembled. I whispered, "Why am I surprised?" and almost laughed. It wasn't funny, but it felt too small to cry about. I thought of the times I was left behind. The school play they missed because Valerie had a soccer game. The Thanksgiving they forgot to call. I'd told myself then that they were just busy, that I was being dramatic. Now it felt different, like I'd been the background character in someone else's story my whole life. A soft knock on the door. My husband's voice. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "Just fixing my makeup." He didn't push. He never did. That was one of the reasons I married him. He believed my lies when I needed him to. I walked back out, smiled for photos, made toasts, and danced because that's what brides are supposed to do. People told me I looked radiant. I thanked them. My husband spun me around, and for a brief moment, I forgot. But then I saw a family taking a picture together, parents, siblings, arms around each other. My chest tightened again. Later, when the music faded and the guests left, the hall was quiet except for the sound of plates being cleared. I sat at a table with my shoes off, staring at the half-empty glasses. My husband touched my shoulder. "Do you want to call them tomorrow?" he asked gently. I looked at my phone. The screen was blank. No missed calls, no texts, no messages. Just silence. "No," I said finally. "I think I understand now." He nodded, didn't ask what I meant. On the drive home, the streets were empty. The headlights passed over the same yellow leaves I'd admired that morning. Somehow, they looked duller now. That night, I lay in bed next to him, the sound of the ceiling fan steady above us. I closed my eyes and saw those empty chairs again, the white ribbons fluttering slightly in the air. It wasn't grief anymore, it was something colder, sharper. Not rage, but clarity. For the first time, I knew where I stood in their world. And it wasn't beside them. I woke early that morning. The wedding band still shone on my finger. I sat at the kitchen counter, leaning into the mug of coffee, the steam fading into the autumn light coming through the window. I shuffled past the unopened stack of greeting cards, "Congratulations, Venus and Mark." They all read, and the wilting bouquet tucked in a vase by the sink. I had expected messages, a phone call from Mom, a text from Dad, even a voicemail would have been enough. But nothing came. Silence felt oppressive. The day before, people at the reception had offered condolences. "I'm so sorry your family didn't make it." Their eyes flicked with pity. I accepted the smiles, I wiped away the tightness in my chest, I told them I was fine. But in the quiet of morning, the missing call clanged louder than any apology. I remembered calling each sibling, reminding each parent, "This is our day. Please be there." Mom said, "We're all set." Dad said, "We just need to wrap a few things up." I trusted them. I believed them. I took their word. I reached for my phone, opened Instagram absent-mindedly. I scrolled, half hoping someone had tagged me, posted a photo with a caption like, "Sorry we missed it." Instead, there it was, my sister, in midlife, surrounded by friends and family, my parents behind her. And the caption read, "Real family moments. Nothing better than celebrating with the ones who matter." I stared until the screen blurred. My cheeks warmed, not with envy, but with a kind of betrayal. Because I realized they didn't just skip my wedding, they made a statement by buying into someone else's headline. My husband placed his hand on mine. I asked for a minute alone. I retreated to the living room, sat on the floor with my back against the sofa, coffee cooling in my hand. I thought about every time I'd offered up my own milestone and they'd been absent. Graduations, birthdays, nights I cried over heartbreak. I'd shown up for them, held their kids, helped unpack their boxes. I said, "I'm fine," when they needed me. Maybe the biggest betrayal wasn't that they weren't there, it was that I kept expecting better. I picked up the phone again and dialed my mother's number. It rang 5 times. Voicemail. I let it sit. Then I hung up. I tried my sister. Straight to voicemail. I typed, "Hope your party was everything you wanted." Then I erased it. I deleted the text. I didn't want them to know how much this hurt. I didn't want them to think I'd stoop so low. Because when someone shows you what you mean to them, believe them. Later that afternoon, my best friend knocked on the door holding a small cake box and a bouquet of daisies. She didn't ask questions. We sat in my living room, the flowers between us, the muted gray light outside. We laughed a little. We cried. We told no one else's story but our own. She raised her glass and said, "To chosen family." And something in my chest shifted. I realized family isn't always the blood relatives, it's the people who show up when you don't even ask. I made a quiet vow. I will never chase belonging again. That night I stood by the window, a single candle flickering on the sill. I lit it not because I expected someone to come, but because I was letting go. I whispered, "I forgive you for not coming, but I won't forget." Then I opened a notebook and began writing a letter, not to send, but to free myself. That afternoon I logged onto my laptop for a Zoom meeting, the kind I'd done a dozen times in the last year from my home in suburban Maryland. I muted the mic, watched as the little window opened, and let my gaze drift over the tidy office corner I'd set up. Photos of my husband and me on the shelf, the soft light of autumn pouring through the window blinds. I reached for my phone to double-check the meeting link, tapped the messages icon, and didn't notice the voice note play itself. It was my cousin's voice, faint, muted, but loud enough. In the background I heard laughter. Then, unmistakably, Venus's bouquet looked like a pity party. The name, the tone, the casual cruelty, it hit me with a sharp clarity. I stopped breathing. My fingers froze. The meeting muted itself. My coworker was speaking but I didn't hear a word. I stared at the screen, at the audio bar moving without thought, and realized that yes, I was the subject of mockery. Not acknowledged. Mentioned only to be dismissed. Later, with the call behind me, I sat on the kitchen floor. My phone still in hand. I recalled at age 10 when my sister received a brand new dress for the talent show and I got one that cost half the price. I remembered their laughter, a whisper I heard in the corridor. My mother stayed silent then. Now she was silent again. It wasn't the words this time, it was the comfort with which they were spoken. That made it worse. I closed my eyes and let the memory of waiting slide through me. I said quietly, maybe the biggest betrayal isn't what they did, they made me expect better. That evening, my husband placed his hand on my shoulder and asked if I wanted to call them. I shook my head. They didn't even think I'd hear it, I said. That's the kind of truth I needed. He told me my pain was real. I thanked him. Then I admitted, I used to hope their silence meant guilt. Now I know, it just meant indifference. We sat together on the couch, our legs stretched out. I felt far away from him in that moment, though he held my hand like the safest place in the world. I deleted the voice note, not forgiveness, just a stop. I opened the wedding photo album on my laptop. I changed the caption under the photo where my father should have stood. I walked down the aisle myself. I moved her smile off the screen. I archived my posts. I saved them in a folder named Air Proof. I emailed the folder to myself. They don't get to be part of the joy they dismissed. That was the thought I held as I shut the laptop. Before bed I opened my notes app and titled a new entry, What I Will No Longer Tolerate. I wrote, no more answering guilt calls. No more family holidays if I'm the afterthought. No more hoping they'll change. I stopped composing sentences that sounded like begging. For the first time, I committed to building something just for myself. I didn't need their approval. I needed their absence to make me free. I got home just after 5. Traffic was slow but I didn't mind. There was something about the quiet hum of the car that gave me space to think, though today, that space felt too wide, too cold. I walked into the apartment and set my keys down. The bouquet from the wedding, wilted and brown, still sat on the end table. I hadn't thrown it out yet. I didn't know if I was waiting on purpose or just avoiding the finality of it. I moved to the study and reached for the velvet jewelry box on the bookshelf. The one Grandma Margaret gave me when I turned 16. I opened it, fully expecting to see the necklace I'd carried in my mind for years, what she called, the start of legacy. But all I found was air. The satin lining, the indentation where the chain once lay empty. The air left my lungs. I sat down. I remembered the way her hand trembled when she gave it to me. For the one you choose, she said. Not the one they chose for me. Not the moment they staged. Mine. I held the box tighter than I meant to. The velvet rubbed rough against my palm. It felt like betrayal wrapped in tradition. Did they think I'd forget? That I wouldn't notice? That I'd smile through that, too? Before the sun fully set, I was already in the car. I didn't text my husband, didn't call ahead. I just drove. Virginia wasn't far. Grandma's house was still technically ours, left to the family, they said. I parked outside and walked up the porch I hadn't seen since her funeral. Inside, everything smelled like thyme, cedar, old paper, a faint trace of her perfume. The attic door creaked. I climbed slow. It felt like walking into memory. There it was, the trunk. I opened it. Inside were layers of paperwork, some framed photos, and then, tucked in a sleeve, legal documents. Her will, a notarized note, and a temporary release form. My mother's handwriting. Temporary release of Margaret Rowland's necklace to Madison Rowland. May 20th. That date, that name, I didn't even need to ask. It was taken before my wedding. I sat back, not crying, not yelling, just still. They traded trust for convenience. And never looked back. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not mine, yet. Just the one who'd handled Grandma's estate. I asked about the scholarship fund we were all told would come from Grandma's memorial donations. He hesitated, but answered. It was redirected, he said, to cover venue and event costs. For Madison's wedding. I closed my eyes. I checked the local paper's site. There it was, Madison standing next to a Roland Foundation sign. A ribbon cutting. A new scholarship bearing my grandmother's name launched without my input, using funds they told me were still being processed. My name was nowhere, not even in the acknowledgements. I stared at the screen, took screenshots. Zoomed in, saw my parents in the background. Laughing. They weren't grieving, they were celebrating. I looked at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired, older, but clearer. This silence, it wasn't a bridge. It was a border. Back home in Seattle that evening, I opened my laptop. Made a new folder. Named it, Heirloom Proof. Photos. Screenshots. The audio from the Zoom clip. That form with Mom's signature. Everything labeled and backed up twice. I typed out a short message to the attorney. Ready when you are. My husband stood at the door. He didn't say anything for a moment, then asked, "You okay?" I said, "I don't want to fight tomorrow. I want the truth today." He nodded once. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. Later that night, I changed into pajamas, brushed my teeth, and stood by the mirror. The velvet box was back on the dresser, next to a framed photo of Grandma holding me at the beach. I whispered, I didn't need them in the front row to be seen. But I will be heard. I walked over to the closet, opened the small safe, and placed the box inside. Then I picked up my phone and dialed. An old friend from law school picked up on the second ring. "Hey," I said, "I think it's time I reopened something." Mid-morning, I was sitting at my desk, halfway through a mug of coffee that had gone tepid. Nothing unusual, emails, spreadsheets, a meeting reminder I hadn't read yet. Then I saw it. The subject line just sat there, bolded, family party photos. I almost didn't open it. But the sender caught my attention, a distant cousin, someone I barely speak to. When I clicked it, I saw it was a forwarded thread. A long one, and my sister's email was all over it. I scrolled, thinking it might be pictures from Grandma's scholarship launch or something harmless. It wasn't. They were talking about me. Not in the way you talk about someone you miss. It started with jokes. Her sad little wedding looked like it was sponsored by a clearance bin. Someone else chimed in. I'm just glad we dodged that drama. Then, like a rotten cherry on top, one line in bold. Let's all agree to avoid her at Thanksgiving, too much energy. I didn't move, didn't blink. My hand hovered over the mouse. There it was, casual cruelty, sent like it was a brunch plan. The worst part? No one objected. No one said, that's too far. They just kept going. My palms were cold. I realized I was holding my breath. Not because I was hurt, though I was, but because something inside me had just shifted. This wasn't about them forgetting me. It was about them removing me. I opened a folder where I'd saved my wedding photos, just in case, one day, they reached out and asked to see them. I deleted that folder. Every single one. They never planned to understand me. They planned to make space without me in it. I forwarded the email thread to myself, then archived the original. Not out of pettiness, out of proof. I took a few minutes. Just sat there, letting it all soak in. Then I picked up my phone and called the cousin who'd forwarded it. She answered fast, like she'd been waiting. I didn't mean to send that, she blurted. I swear it was a mistake, my phone glitched. I cut her off gently. I'm not mad. She went quiet. I just have one question, I said. Is this how they talk when I'm not around? There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing. It's not the first time, she said. Then thank you, I replied. Now I know exactly where I stand. I hung up. No shouting, no breakdown, just, still. I didn't need to ask anything else. That was enough. Later that evening, I pulled out my laptop again. Opened my contacts. Moved most of the family into a new group called Archived Connections. Didn't delete them, just put them somewhere they couldn't reach me by accident anymore. I added password protection to my shared folders, legal documents, wedding archives, anything connected to Grandma's estate. Locked it down. Then I opened a blank note and titled it, How to Celebrate Without Permission. I started a list. Step 1. Start new holiday traditions. Step 2. Host your own table, even if it's just for 2. Step 3. Never wait for a chair to be pulled out. Bring your own. After dinner, I sat with my journal. Leather-bound, heavy in my hands. I wrote. Today I became untethered from the hope they'd see me. Today I was given the gift of overhearing their truth. No rage, no revenge, just clarity. I closed the book after the last line. I will never attend another room where I have to earn my seat. It was raining hard that night, steady and soft, the kind of rain that blurs everything outside the window but makes the inside feel sharper. I was at my desk, sorting through files for work, when my phone lit up. The name stopped me cold, Dad. For a long moment I just watched it ring. My husband looked over from the couch, the question in his eyes clear. I didn't answer right away. It had been months. Not since the wedding, not since the email, not since I stopped waiting. But I picked up anyway. Hey, sweetheart, he said. His voice was calm, too calm. Hi, I answered, neutral. How's married life treating you? He asked it like we were just two people catching up after a normal week. Every pause felt staged. I told him, it's quiet. Peaceful. He cleared his throat. Then his tone changed, lower now. I heard you've been looking into Grandma's estate. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of those words settle between us. I've been looking into the truth, I said. There was silence. Then, a soft chuckle, the kind he used when he was trying to sound amused instead of cornered. You always had a sharp tongue. No, I said quietly. I just stopped swallowing lies. He sighed, long and slow. Venus, listen. The scholarship fund, it was a family compromise. Things were complicated. Complicated, I repeated. That's one word for theft. You don't understand, he said, voice rising just enough to remind me who he used to be in our house. We had debts. Medical, business, your mother's name was tied to it. The foundation helped cover those. It wasn't personal. I didn't interrupt him. I wanted to hear every word. He softened his tone again, back to that practiced calm. You don't need to stir up old ashes, honey. We've handled it. And by handled, you mean. He cut in, sharper now. You always make trouble, Venus. Always digging when things could just stay buried. I didn't reply. He mistook my silence for guilt. He went on, we're asking you, as family, to leave this alone. That word, family, landed differently now. Once it meant belonging. Now it sounded like a boundary. When the call ended, I didn't move for a while. The rain kept tapping against the glass. I opened my notes, replayed the conversation line by line in my head. Certain phrases stuck out. Cover the debts, we had no choice, handled it. It wasn't a mistake. It was a cover-up. I logged into my grandmother's archived bank account. The numbers stared back at me, one transaction, $40,000 withdrawn 2 months before her death. The date matched the foundation launch. My hands were steady. My pulse was not. I sent a message to my lawyer friend. If it's fraud, how long are they liable? He replied 2 minutes later, depends on how clean their paper trail is. Why? I didn't answer. Not yet. My husband came into the room, saw my face, and didn't ask. He just said quietly, he told you everything without realizing it, didn't he? I nodded. Yeah, he did. I walked out to the porch, mug of tea in hand, watching the rain streak down the railings. All my life, I whispered, I kept quiet to keep peace. Now silence keeps them safe. Thunder rolled somewhere distant. It felt right, like the world was confirming something I'd already decided. I thought about my mother. Her silence. Her comfort in pretending not to see. The betrayal hit harder coming from him, though. He was the one who taught me honesty, the one who told me that truth had weight. I wasn't angry because he lied. I was angry because he thought I'd obey. I finished the tea, washed the mug, and went back to my office. By midnight, the printer was humming. I printed every document, every record, every screenshot. Stacked them neatly into a large envelope. Wrote across the front in black ink, Evidence A. Then I opened my laptop, drafted an email to my attorney friend, subject line, time sensitive. Attached a few files, hit send. Before shutting down for the night, I opened my messages, typed one unsent text to my father. If you wanted me to stay quiet, you shouldn't have taught me how to read. I didn't send it, just saved it in drafts. When I finally went to bed, the rain had stopped. The house was quiet. For the first time in months, I slept straight through the night, not waiting for anyone to call. I woke to a storm of alerts on my phone. Hundreds of messages, red icons blinking like warning signs. I sat still on the edge of the bed, fingers hovering over the screen. My sister had sent out a group message, to family, to cousins, to everyone I knew. The header read, "Update, Family Matters." Inside, she called me a jealous parasite, accused me of stealing documents, threatening peace, and always playing victim. Screenshots were attached, out-of-context chats made to look unbalanced. My husband walked in, coffee in hand, and asked quietly, "Do you want me to respond?" I shook my head. Not yet. In the kitchen, the messages kept coming. Emojis, reactions, sad to see this, hope she finds peace, lines shared in silence. One aunt sent, "I love you, but maybe you shouldn't dig so deep." My cousin Jamie replied publicly, "That doesn't sound like Venus." I saw who remained silent, my mother especially. The absence of defense cut deeper than any insult. While the notifications kept flashing, I captured them. Screenshots, names, timestamps. This digital volley wasn't just mean, it was documentation forming quietly. Later that day I answered a call from a blocked number. The voice was low, barely above a whisper. "I don't want to get involved, but you deserve to know the truth." A relative on mom's side, a cousin I barely knew, revealed what I feared. My parents never intended to split grandma's estate fairly. Documents, rewritten after her illness. Foundation money diverted. Only my sister was meant to inherit. I sat still, the wall behind me white and unmovable. The dates matched. Names matched. The mask slipped. "You're not crazy," the voice said. "You just weren't supposed to find out." Then hung up. I closed the laptop, stepped away from the screen, opened my journal and titled a new section, Legal plus Emotional Timeline. I wrote event after event. Empty chairs, phone call from dad, email thread, the box from grandma. I lined up facts and feelings. Realized this was bigger than one dinner or one wedding. It was a pattern. Silence, prefer appearance over justice. I stopped feeling small. I started preparing a response. If they wanted a war, I'd fight with facts, not fire. That night I typed an email, not to send yet, but placed in drafts. Subject: Receipts. I attached files to a Google Drive folder, estate summaries, emails, recorded files. I added a message: "Truth doesn't need yelling. Just reading." I reread it 3 times. My final line read, "The silence you counted on ends today." I didn't send it. Not yet. I know timing matters. I locked the screen, closed the laptop. I walked to the front door and found an envelope slipped beneath the mat. Inside, a photograph from 20 years ago, mom, dad, and a younger me smiling. On the back, only one word: why? The silence ended. The next morning, I didn't even make it to the coffee machine before the TV lit up with that familiar local news jingle. I wasn't listening at first, not until the anchor said, "Paloma Smythe named the next heir of Nava Roland Estate." My chest tightened. My name wasn't mentioned, not once. The screen showed Paloma smiling beside some family lawyer, shaking hands like royalty, headlines flashing across the bottom: "Generational legacy continues." My husband walked in behind me. I didn't turn around. He asked, "What now?" I picked up the remote and turned off the volume. Not the screen, just the sound. Let them smile in silence. I poured my coffee black, stronger than usual, and sat down at my desk. Opened the folder labeled, Evidence A. The truth was in there. One file caught my eye, an email chain titled, East Harbor Transfer. 3 months ago, Langston Hawk sent it to Jasper Faulkner. Simple wording, clinical. Property now under Smythe LLC. That house, East Harbor, wasn't just a property. Grandma had pulled me aside once, years back, touched my wrist gently and said, "That one's for you. I saw the way you looked at the garden." I remember standing in that garden barefoot, 15, thinking the air felt different there. Free. Now it belonged to Paloma's LLC. Quiet theft dressed up as paperwork. I printed it, added it to the folder, airproof, item 3. My voice came out before I even meant to speak. You wrote my story. I'll write your ending. By evening, the gala was in full swing. Paloma's Roland Foundation fundraiser at one of Savannah's priciest venues. I was invited, of course. As a guest. No title, no speech, just presence. I went. Not because I wanted to. Because I needed to be seen. The camera crew panned across the VIP section. I saw it before they did. My name wasn't on any table. But a card read, reserved, Nava family. Right there, empty. A woman 2 rows up leaned to her husband. Is someone missing? The camera flashed at just the right moment. Caught her expression. Caught mine. When the broadcast aired later, my empty chair got more airtime than my face had in 10 years of family events. They erased me, and still I showed up. Back at home, I powered up the laptop again. My fingers moved without hesitation this time. I drafted a post, LinkedIn first. Legacy isn't inherited. It's earned. Here's the ledger I found. Attached a secure link for press contacts. Instagram next. Same message. No filter. No emojis. Just truth. I emailed Harper Winslow, a local reporter who always said, I only chase what matters. The subject line read, You asked what matters. This. Inside. The files, the inheritance emails, a transcript of my father's voice from weeks ago. I hit send. No dramatic music. No trembling hands. Just a calm, sharpened kind of silence. Later that night, I stood in the Virginia house I'd driven to quietly the day before. Pulled up an image of East Harbor on my phone. Rain tapped against the windows. A steady rhythm, not loud, almost comforting. I whispered, they counted on silence. I edited mine into power. I reached for Grandma's velvet box on the shelf and set it next to the old photo of her wearing the necklace now buried in legal battles. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. The power wasn't in what they gave me. It was in what they tried to take and failed to hide. Just as I was about to turn in for the night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. A voice said, we need to talk. Tonight. I woke in the morning, early light filtering through the blinds of my new home office. The velvet box from Grandma sat quietly on the shelf, its emptiness a kind of triumph. I opened the legal letter again. You have the right to claim a minimal payment from the estate. The words were heavy in my hand. I remembered my mother's voice on the phone, don't make trouble for our name. I closed my eyes and let the sunrise settle in. Then I picked up my journal and wrote, Today I set my own terms. I brewed coffee in the mug that reads, Family isn't always blood, sometimes it's heart. I carried it to the window and watched birds land on the sill. I felt peace, not because everything was fixed, but because I had made a choice. I drove to Savannah in the afternoon, the old family estate waiting under the towering oak tree. The gate creaked open as if it remembered me. I walked through halls where I once felt invisible, touching wallpaper patterns I'd ignored as a child. Outside, guests arrived for the small floristry workshop I'd organized in Grandma's memory. Long tables were set up in the lawn, white linens, fresh blooms. I placed place cards. On one end, reserved, for those who show up. On the other end, 4 empty chairs labeled, for those who chose not to. A reporter approached and asked, why the empty chairs? I smiled and replied, because presence is the best legacy. I felt something shift in me, not vengeance, but a realignment of value. I wasn't proving a point to them. I was living one for myself. Later, I stepped up to speak in the community hall, sunlight streaming in through tall windows. I mentioned Grandma's voice. She believed every child deserved a seat at the table. I shared my wedding day, the empty chairs, not for pity, but because that truth carries weight. My husband stood beside me, quiet in the front row. I quoted Maya Angelou, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. My sister's face appeared on the live stream in the crowd, she didn't leave. I ended with, this table doesn't choose who sits, it chooses who stands by you. The room applauded. I felt a victory deeper than applause. For everyone who never had a seat, I had stood up and made one. After the event, under the oak tree, I walked with a friend from high school. I pointed at the old swing set. I spent years swinging, hoping someone would push me, I said quietly. She smiled and replied, "You finally built your own playground." I didn't call my parents. I didn't need to. I locked the velvet box, necklace inside, in a new display beside the first check from my new studio. The sense of closure was real. That evening I returned home, sent a short email to my florist newsletter. New workshop announced, teaching flowers, legacy, and every seat matters. I clicked send and closed the laptop. I stepped onto the patio, night air crisp. I raised a glass of sparkling water and said softly, "To the ones who waited for me, and to the ones who didn't show up, I set my own table." My phone pinged. Unknown number. I glanced at the screen and read the message, "You did what we never believed possible." I didn't answer right away. I just smiled.